In this video on RTK Query, which is a powerful tool for managing state and fetching data in React, I'll be guiding you through how to use RTK Query, the basics of it, and demonstrate how it streamlines data fetching processes. So just to show you what I have here, I have a empty VS Code here, not empty, but I've build the front end using Vite with npm I create Vite at latest. There's nothing here as of now. If I run the server, I've cleared out everything, as you can see here, and if I go here, this is what we have. So let's get started. So I'll just expand this here and I'll say npm I react redux. Okay, so we'll be needing npm I react redux. We'll also be needing redux toolkit, which makes using redux far more easier. This as well, and we don't need the npm I part, and I'll hit enter. This will basically install redux toolkit for us. So if I go to their docs to get started, scroll down and go to RTK Query overview. Right here we can before that we'll also have to set up a mock data. So we'll be using something called JSON server. So if you don't have this installed, you'll have to first install it using npm JSON server. I forgot to use I to install it, and G. This will globally install JSON server for you, but I won't be doing this as I already have JSON server. So in order to do that, first we'll create a folder called data, and in here we'll have a JSON file. We'll call it athlete.json, and we'll just create a JSON file here. So not file, JSON data. So I'll call it athletes. This will be an array which will have object id 1, so the id 1, and name, let me say as Mike Tyson, and we'll also have a sport which will be boxing. So I think I'll have 3 of these. So I'll have 1, 2, this will be McGregor, let's say MMA, and one last one, 3, and let's say Sugar Ray Leo, boxing. Yeah. So now to get a server running, what we can do is JSON server -- watch. So we'll have to mention the path, which is data /athl. I'll make sure my spelling is correct, JSON, and also mention the port, which is 8000. I hit enter, and if I go here, we have our server running here. This tool is really good for prototyping, for front-end devs. So yeah, we've got that done, and logs out the request as well. So we can close that off, and we can start with our redux part. So if I just scroll down, first thing what we'll have to do is I'll just resize this appropriately, and this as well. Okay, cool. Now I'll have a folder here called, I'll call it redux, and inside redux let me have a file called api.ts. Now here, if I go to the docs and go to configure the store, before configuring I'll just follow the docs here. Okay, so the first thing they do is they import create API and fetch base query. After that, I'll explain what this means shortly. Let me just do this. We'll have to name it, so let's call it athletes API, create API, and you'll also have to mention a name for this, which is basically reduce path. I'll call this also athlete API. Then we'll have to give it a base query, so from where it makes the query. So in our case it is this. So while you're actually building a project, you'll actually have to put this in an environment variable, but as this is just for as this video is just to show you how RTK works, I won't be doing that. Next, what we have to give is something called tag types. So this is basically used for when you're actually invalidating the data. This is used. I'll be showing you how this works shortly. So I'll call this as athletes. Yeah, that's fine. And we can, okay, so the next part is the endpoints. So this is where all of our endpoints goes. We'll be actually creating all our endpoints here. So in our case, the first one is get, let's say get athletes, all the athletes. So we do that by using builder dot query, and the first parameter to this type is actually what this returns. So in our case, it will be athlete of array, and this is the payload, what the user sends through the payload. So for this anyway, it will be void, as we won't be sending anything, and it's giving an error because there's no type for this yet. So I'll create that. So I'll go here, typings dot d dot ts, and I'll create a type for it. So athlete, and it will have a ID, which is a number, and we'll have a name, which will be a string. Then we'll have a sport, which will also be a string. Yeah, so I'll save this as well. So this will be an array of that. And next is the path. So in our case, as you can see here, it's http :/localhost:8000/athletes. So if I go here, I'll actually, this base is, the base will be http localhost 8000, and here we'll say go to path/athletes. Hopefully that is the correct spelling. Yeah, query, and we'll also provide a tag here. This is for, again, invalidating the data. So whenever the user makes adds or deletes the data in the server, it automatically appears in the front end. That's why we do this. So if I go athletes, okay, so that's basically the endpoint. We've created an endpoint. Now we'll have to configure the store. Oh yeah, before that, we'll also have to export from athletes API. So whenever you're creating an endpoint, you have to basically suffix it with use get. Okay, I'm getting an error because probably TypeScript is slowing down, or I'm making a mistake. Okay, so now if I do use, I should get a prompt here. Okay, use get athlete query. So whenever you're creating an endpoint here, you'll suffix it with use and prefix it with get athletes. Okay, so I'm getting an error. Let's see what it says. Use implicitly has any, because okay, so that error is gone now. Now next what we'll do is we'll configure our store. So if I go to main.tsx, and I import configure store here. So in the docs, they've basically separated out and put this in a separate file, but I'll be doing it in a single file. So yeah, I'll import this as well. And next is the store. Copy this out, paste it right here, and we'll have to make some changes. So in here we'll have to, it won't be Pokemon API, it will be athlete API, and we'll make the changes here and here as well. Okay. So this part is basically because if you want to, as it's mentioned here, if you want to cache or invalidate data, you'll have to specify the middleware, and also this as well, setup listeners store.get store.dispatch. This is used for caching and invalidating data. Next is they haven't given the store here, so if I go, okay, they've not mentioned the store. Anyway, I'll do it. If I go here and give it a provider, put this under here, this will be coming from React Redux, and also will be giving a store which we've created here. Okay, so if I saved everything, if I resize this, if I go back to app.tsx, now as I've already created my first endpoint, let's test this out. So if I go here, we'll be destructuring data from use get athletes query. If I save that and console log out the data, go back here, and my server is not running. I'll run my server. If I go here, okay, it's made a request here, and if I open my DevTools, I'm getting my data from my backend. Nice. So I'll display that data now. So if I go here and just type all athletes and data dot map athletes, actually it's athlete, and if I create a fragment here, okay, I've messed up with the brackets, which is very common in my case. Okay, and then let me, in the p tag, let me put the athlete dot name and also athlete dot sport. If I save that, we get all our athletes with their sport. So Mike Tyson boxing, McGregor MMA. Let me just restructure this a bit. So let me just say div. I'll put this in a div, and this I'll put a div. Style it a bit. So let's say display, say flex, and see how that looks good. And I'll give a gap as well of 2. I'll mention the sport here, so sport, that's fine. Yeah, that, I think that's fine. Mike Tyson sport. Actually, I'll also give a flex direction of column. just for you all to, I mean, see it more perfectly. Okay, fine. So this we've basically done our first query. Now next, let me show you how to get a single athlete. Now this is basically getting all the posts. Now we'll focus on getting a single post. So this time we'll create an endpoint called get single athletes, builder query, builder.query, as we're querying data, and this won't be an array as it is a single object, which will be the name, the ID, name and sport. And as a payload, we'll be sending in a number from the client, and query will query out, let's say, the ID. We'll call it ID. This is in backquotes. And if I go and put ID here, provide tags, this is actually not required. Save it. And if I go here, just to show you, if I go /1, I should be getting Mike Tyson. And if I go /2, it's McGregor. Fine. Now if I go back over here, oh yeah, as always, if you create a endpoint, you'll also have to export it with this, with the prefix of use, and gets use. It's not giving me use get single athlete. Yeah. And here if I go, I'll just do the same here, but this time I'll call as say athlete, single athlete. I'll rename this to single athlete. It will come from use get athlete, get single athlete query. Single, what was the exact name? This one. If I paste it here, and I have to import it. Okay, so it's giving me an error because I'm not providing it with the argument here, because I've mentioned here the payload will be a number. So if I give the parameter here, it doesn't give me an error anymore. So if I console log out single athlete, save that, go back to Wheat, open DevTools, I should be getting Mike Tyson. Yeah, so that's also working. So if I go down here, say single athlete, and let me put that in the browser, single athlete dot name. Yeah, so now we have a single athlete, Mike Tyson. I'll also put in the sport as well. So sport will be single athlete dot sport. Sport is boxing. Good. So we've done our basically we've done reading the data, we've read all the data, we've read a single data. Next up is adding a data, so mutations. So I'll just copy in this, I'll paste it right here, call it add athlete. This time it'll be a mutation. It'll be a mutation. We'll be getting all of the athletes, and we'll be sending in from the payload an object of athletes. So this will be different now. So this will be the bracket and a curly bracket. Now you'll have to give it some objects, which is you'll have to mention the URL. So the URL will be athletes. Okay, it's giving me an error because, let me see where I made the mistake. Okay, it's because because of this athletes. Yeah, Cool. So we have to mention a URL to where it points to. So it's basically athletes here. And the next up is the method. So the method is a post, and the last one is the body, which is basically athlete. Actually, I'll rename this to singular instead of plural. Athlete. Okay, error gone. And if I save that, go back here, and I could create a function now. So I'll nfn handle add athlete. There will be no parameters. I'll make sure this is an async function. Now in order to use that hook, you'll have to create the structure you'll have to name it as add athlete and destructure it from you'll have to get it from, again, like always, I've forgotten to export this. So here it'll be use add athlete mutation, use add athlete mutation, and we'll be getting add athletes from there. And if I await add athlete, and you'll have, I'll give basically an object here itself, so it will have an ID. I don't want to create states and make it more complicated, as this is as we are just focusing on RTK query. So we have, if I go back to all the posts, we have 3 here, so I'll give an ID of 4. We can give a name of, let's say, Kobe Covington, and we can also give a sport, which is MMA. Okay, and let me create a button now. So if I go here under all athletes, right here, let me create a button, add athlete. It's not showing up. Why is that? Refresh it. Oh, let me just check my server. What is wrong? What has gone wrong? Ambiguous indirect import. Okay, let me just check what that is. If I save this, I think the error should go away. Okay, nice. So I'll put this after the mapping the data. So now if I add athlete, let me open this. Okay, now click add athlete, and let me go here, check here, refresh it. Nothing appears here because I forgot to put an on click here. On click, handle add athlete. Save that. If I go back here, if I click add athlete, it's made a post request. If I go to my backend and hit refresh, it gives me the data which we just added. But as you can see here, it didn't actually, when we added the data, it didn't come up here because we are not invalidating the data. So in order to do that, to invalidate data, what you could do is go here and under add athlete endpoint, you give it in the invalidate tags, you mention that whenever this updates athletes, you need to get all the data. So here, that's why we provide tags athletes, so that whenever we make a mutation, it refreshes the data and it knows from where to refresh it. That's why these tags work. So I'll save that. Now I'll actually add a new data. So here, give an ID of 5. So Kobe, let me say Ross, and let's say, I don't know, wrestling. I save it, and if I add athlete, it comes up here. So we get fast refresh, not fast refresh, sorry, we can invalidate data now. Okay, so whenever we are making changes, whenever we are adding data, get all data refetches the query. Okay, so add athlete is done. Next up is deleting. So if I copy this, paste it here, and it says say delete athlete. It's a mutation. We'll be getting an array of athletes, and as a payload from the client, we'll be getting a number, and it'll be an ID, and this will be a template literal, and I could give the ID here. This time it will be a put request, no sorry, it will be a delete request, put comes later, delete, and the body will be just the ID, and we'll also invalidate the athletes. If I save that and come right here, resize this a bit, where I'm mapping through again, okay, right here. So now I could say div, I'll create a div, and inside the div, no, we don't need a div actually. I'll create a button and say X. Okay, nice. So now next we could actually use that hook now. So const, yeah, again I forgot this is a recurring theme, I guess. I'm forgetting to export the hook. So use delete athlete mutation. Save that. In here I'll call it delete athlete. We'll be getting from use delete, yeah, this one, use delete delete athlete mutation, and I could create another function which is basically handle delete athlete, and this will be getting, we'll be getting an ID which is a number, and we'll pass in the delete athlete here. We'll also have to, this will be an async function, this will be await, and we'll have to give it a ID. So in here, if I go to the button on click, and if I give it the function and also the ID of the athlete, I save that. Now let me try deleting it. It deleted the athlete and also refetched the data from here. As you can see, delete and then get. We'll delete another one. So Ross, I deleted. Fine. Now the final one is update. Copy this and update athlete. Will be sending back an array of athletes. We'll be getting a number. No, actually we'll be getting an athlete because we'll be changing the name and the sport as well. So this time I'll call it athlete, and this will be athlete.id, and as for the body I'll be giving an athlete, and instead of delete it will be a put request, and this time I won't forget to export it. So use update athlete mutation. Save that, go back here, I'll create another function. So nfn handle update athlete will be receiving a ID as a number, and then I could again get that from in here. So update athlete, as you can see, it's after you've created the endpoints, it's very easy to like get an update data. Only the setting part is difficult. After that, it's quite easy, it's quite seamless. So update athlete, and you'll be receiving an ID. So in here we'll create another button. I'll just copy this out and I'll rename this update and on click handle update athlete. Okay, yeah, so here in here is giving me an error because here I've mentioned that as a payload we are getting an object of athlete, and here I'm giving just the ID. So I'll just correct that. So ID, I don't have to give the key and value because both have the same name, and this time the name will be, let's say, so we'll change McGregor to, let's say, Tyson Fury, and we'll also have to give the sport, which is boxing, heavyweight boxing to be precise. Okay, so if I hit update here, it changes Tyson Fury sport boxing. And if I go to the logs, it's a put request. First updates it and then again revalidates it with the get request. So now with that, you've you know how to use RTK query. We built a CRUD application. Hope